You're listening to Between the Lines with Rob Reynolds. Good morning, friends. How you doing? This is Rob. And this morning we're going to, first of all, wish you a happy Thanksgiving week. And we're going to talk a little bit about growing up. I'll have to do it. I had a great childhood. I don't think I'd change a thing. And one of the things that was a big part of growing up for me was playing the piano at church. Now, I started when I was about 8 years old, taking lessons, and by the time I think it was 15 or 16, I was asked to play at church. And that's on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday. We were Southern Baptists, so we went a lot. You know, we had that Wednesday catch up in case you missed Sunday morning or night. And then, of course, you'd have that occasional revival you'd throw in there. So it was a pretty busy job. And it had a lot of benefits with it. I mean, we'll explain that as we go a little further here. But I will never forget one of the most exciting things is being able to play at those revivals. Because you know, up the revivals, they have these evangelists done it that at the end of the service, when it came time to play the invitation or those kind of things, and you were just into Just As I Am, well, the evangelist would say, okay, let's raise those hands. If you did this and you do that, you need prayer. You slip that hand up. Nobody's looking. Why? I was looking. I was looking at the whole thing. And I'd be scanning the crowd. I'd say, well, look at that. Look at that. She ought to be waving that hand. Look a little bit further, and there was a guy. Huh, good night. You ought to have both hands up there, son. Go a little further, and there was a kid. Now there he is. He got thrown out of Bible school when he was 10 years old. He ought to have his hand up. So you know, you got those little perks like that. Well, those were all local people usually, and you knew who they were. But the revivals, that's when the big sinners came out. I mean, and these evangelists, they love to ask that question. And I thought revivals were great because you got an extra time to look and see what was going on. But one time we had a revival and it came time, and the preacher says, now, if you need prayer or you've just been having a tough time, you raise your hand. Nobody's looking. And of course, I was. And I looked out there, and this lady had slipped in on us. She was not a local. We don't know if she came down from the north, maybe from Mount Vernon, or maybe she came up over the border from Kentucky, but she wasn't a normal. She was a foreigner there in our auditorium, and obviously had a lot of problems. She threw that hand up in the air, and not only did she do that, she raced down to the front. That's where the preacher was. He had on this lavalier mic, and everyone in the church could hear her say, "Oh, preacher, I've been running around with everybody in church," and he was trying to cover up the microphone, and four deacons were trying to wrestle her back to the back. I don't know whether they're going to pray for her or give her some duct tape, one of the two. But that's just one of the benefits that I had of being the church pianist. The other one had to do with playing for funerals. Well, I didn't know. I thought it was a really formal thing, but there was a place in Marion where you could play for a funeral, and why, you just went up through the back. Nobody ever saw you. You'd wear shorts and a t-shirt, play for the soloist, and then you just left. Well, I had one of those situations one day where I went up there, and the funeral director said, I tell you, it's going to be a tough one. Ooh, it's tough. They're all tore up. But my problem is the soloist hasn't shown up, so you're going to have to kind of expand your repertoire and play a little more. Well, I'd already been through the old rugged cross about a couple times, and little Just As I Am, and a little How Great Thou Art, and Holy, Holy, Holy. And then I even brought out All Creatures of Our God and King, and that was one you don't play very often. But he said, it's not looking good down there. I don't think she's going to show up for this solo. So I went into the old rugged cross again. It's always a standard. And I said to him, I said, how are they taking it down there? He says, oh, They're tore up about it. I said, well, let me play a couple more songs and you can let me know how it turns out, and we'll see how it does. So I played them again, and a lot of them I'd repeated, and I mean I could just hear them down there. They just tore up, and then I looked over to the funeral director, and I said, "Well, I got one more. The only one I can think of right now, but it'll have to do." And I went into Up From the Grave He Rose, and I'll be darned if I didn't hear nothing but a gasp downstairs, like. Then on, for some reason, I didn't get many requests to play at funerals. You've been listening to Between the Lines with Rob Reynolds. You have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.